When Michael Jordan was cut from his high school basketball team, he went home and locked himself in his room. Einstein couldn't speak until he was 4 years old, and his teachers said he would never amount to much. Walt Disney was fired from a newspaper for lacking imagination and having no original ideas. When Steve Jobs was 30 years old, he was left devastated after being unwillingly removed from the company he co-founded. Imagine if these people gave up when they failed. How different would the world be today? I heard something powerful about failure recently that makes a whole lot of sense if you think about it.
Recently we reviewed that U.S. Army field manual on here from like World War II era. And it says in that manual, it says, other than death, all failure is psychological.
Other than death, all failure is psychological. Now, most of us don't live in a war zone or anything, but nonetheless, this advice is solid. If we're not dead, we're still able to get up and be in the fight. So to move forward, we have to think about failure differently. We have to replace the word failure with learning. We're all gonna fail in the traditional sense of the word, but true failure is not doing something with what we've learned. It's known that Thomas Edison failed 10,000 times while trying to perfect the light bulb. And when he was asked about how he felt about failing 10,000 times, he said, "I have not failed. I just found 10,000 ways that won't work." As long as we don't give up, as long as we don't surrender, as long as we don't quit, then we have not failed. We're just still learning. Only once we quit, the failure becomes real. Only then the death of that goal becomes real and the failure of it becomes real right alongside of it. Anybody who's at the top praises failure because they know its value.
Successful people fail a lot. They fail a whole lot more than they succeed. They extract the lessons from the failure and they use that the energy and they use the wisdom to come around to the next phase of success.
The reason we hear successful people always talking about the value of failure is probably best summed up in that old quote. When we succeed, we tend to celebrate, but when we fail, we ponder. And it's in that pondering where the magic of failure happens. When we fail and that emotion hits us, that emotion is our motivator for learning and moving past that failure. We don't want that uncomfortable feeling with us any longer than it has to be. And the easiest way to get rid of that feeling is to learn what went wrong and know you're going to perform better next time. And then let that emotion go after we get our use out of it. And it's gonna be hardest to let go of that feeling when we make a mistake that we can't recover from. There are some failures we cannot recover from. Failing a drug test for a job, for example. If you failed the drug test, most likely that opportunity is gone and it's not coming back. Learn from it, be motivated by it, and don't worry about some big missed opportunity because honestly, it's out of reality for now. And even most mistakes that we make that we can't recover from aren't nearly as bad as we think. There's people sitting in prison right now for the mistakes they made, or they got someone seriously hurt who may never recover. Most of our everyday failures will hurt, but most of the time, there is a much worse mistake that we could have made. In 2017, Apple admitted they were slowing down the older iPhone's performance to conserve battery life, and they did this without consent from the user. Of course, this pissed everybody off and resulted in them facing over 60 class action lawsuits worldwide and huge backlash from loyal customers. Even after that horrific mistake, they're still ranked the second most profitable company in 2019. It's our choice to either accept failure as part of life or have it forced down our throat later down the road. We need to accept failure now because we will be failing forever. If we're growing in life, we're failing in life. It's part of the formula of success, which is why respecting failure is the first step in dealing with it. Failure is like a vaccine that gives temporary discomfort before long-term success takes place.
Failure is part of life. I mean, the difference for me though is I look at failure as a stepping stone to success. It's a speed bump. I know I'm going to fail, but it's not failure if you learn something. And so, gosh, I've made so many mistakes. I've screwed so many things up, but every time I do, it becomes a way for me to explain to someone else what it takes.
When we love success and start going for it, we'll quickly see that the road to the top is through failure. And we'll also see that failure is not permanent. Falling is not permanent. Once we get back up, we'll rise stronger, wiser, and even more determined to get that goal. 9 times out of 10, we will be a failure. But we have to love success so much that those 9 failures are well worth the bliss of that single success. If we ever want to be something greater than we are today, then going through failure is the only option. Ask yourself, do you want to be someone who fears failure, or do you want to be someone who loves success?
Don't be afraid to fail, because if you're afraid to fail, then you're always holding yourself back because you're afraid that if you go all out, you may fail. Well, in weightlifting, we learned that very quickly. The only way you could break a record is if you're willing to fail. That's when you put on more weight, you try it, sometimes you would not be able to lift it, which has happened to me many times, but eventually, when you train hard enough, you will lift it. So don't be afraid to fail. I mean, how far can you fall?
People will tell you that only 1% make it to the top, which is absolutely true in most instances. But the reason for that is because it's only 1% who stick to that diet and work out every day they need to reach that fitness goal they want. Only 1% stick it out through the hard times. Only 1% want it that bad. So it doesn't mean we only have a 1% chance for success. It just means not to do what the 99% do. It means not quitting in a few weeks when it gets too hard. 99% quit too early because they don't want it that bad. Most of the challenges we face in life are just tests to see how much we really want it. And it doesn't matter how good we are already. What we lack in natural talent can easily be made up for with drive, consistency, and perseverance. There is no way around the pain of failure if you're planning to succeed at anything in life.
That I wasn't really afraid to get hurt for the sake of progression. I wanted to push through and learn from my mistakes and endure injury and pain to get to these goals. And so I think that a lot of friends that I had, they got hurt once and either they quit or their parents told them to quit.
Now there is this popular quote going around: fail early, fail often, fail fast. This isn't really the greatest advice in my opinion when it comes to failure.
I am not a fan of the phrase that pops up from the valley from time to time: fail often, fail fast.
Right.
The idea that you've got unlimited resources, you can fail repeatedly, and if you're failing fast, it means how much thought did we put into the endeavor that which we are failing at? Not a lot, I would have thought.
Fail often and fail fast is sort of a fearless approach to failure, which won't necessarily work. Fear can actually be our ally in failure, and fearlessness about failure can make us reckless. Instead, we have to fail smart and without hesitation. When we fail, our reaction is usually to try and fix it immediately to rid ourselves of that uncomfortable emotion. But the more valuable move would be to put that to the side and just really go back on reflecting on that failure and learning what went wrong, and then taking action. We're more likely to find a better solution out of thought rather than impulse. With each one of our failures, we want to do the best we can do, which will require thinking about each and every failure that happens to us. The great part about this is when we know for a fact that we did our best, then whether we succeed or fail almost becomes irrelevant. We always measure failure or success by the outcome. when its true measurement should always be the effort we put in. Those who try hard and fail despite their efforts should be honored, especially when we live in a society that has such an avoidant attitude about failure. Most people, if you ask them why they failed, they'll regress to this sort of adolescent thinking and distance themselves from the responsibility. Like a kid who says, "My toy got broken," instead of "I broke my toy." They'll say it was someone or something else that caused that failure. And by distracting themselves from the blame to avoid that uncomfortable emotion, it takes away the ability to learn from that failure. It takes away their pondering. Every single successful person has failed a lot more than they have succeeded. Most of them have failed a lot more than we have, and that's why they're successful. They understand that it's just part of the process.
How far are you willing to fail?
Well, I mean, unfortunately and fortunately, I failed quite a bit.
Yeah.
But I understand that's actually part of the process of succeeding. I'm not one that really believe in failure. I believe you have setbacks, and you have to learn from those. You have to learn what are those landmines that can be avoided the next time. What are those pitfalls? And you have to learn from that stuff. And so I welcome those things. It's a part of life. But listen, my first year in the league on national TV, 18 years old, I shot 5 straight air balls in the playoffs in front of millions of people.
If we truly want to live our life to the fullest, then we have to accept failure as part of the process of that. And that is the meaning we can give to all the failure we face in our lives, all the hits we take. We endure those hits because we want the best life for ourselves as possible. And taking those hits is the only way to get that. If we can just really internalize and accept that life is hard, it'll make our life so much easier.
Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. Now, if you know what you're worth, now go out and get what you're worth. But you gotta be willing to take the hits and not pointing fingers saying you ain't where you wanna be because of him or her or anybody. Cowards do that, and that ain't you.